Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien. Lead! And Livingston have the lead! Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livy, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name's Euan, and today Angus does actually join me. Angus, first of all, I think you owe our listeners an apology for not appearing last week. What happened, mate? Let's hear the story.
I mean, I think we can just attribute it to, celebrate it a wee bit too much from beating Celtic, in all honesty. I think that's all that we can really go by. Bizarrely enough, I've probably got a better excuse this week if I was to miss the podcast, as, most people will just be listening. I'm currently sitting here with, a big sling on and the world's biggest cast ever because I've got a double fracture in my wrist. So, yeah, very pleasant weekend. Would I say it was worse than our weekend's results? Maybe not. But yeah, of course, we'll get right into that very, very soon.
Do you want to know the best bit about his fractured wrist is it's not even a good story. It's no like, oh, look at the other guy. He fell over essentially in a game of football. Isn't that right?
That's true, but I still scored in that game, so I think that should be the headline.
Well, as always, you can find this episode as well as all our other episodes on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livy, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll start the episode off by talking about our League Cup quarter-final tie at Ibrox as the Lions were tamed by some ravenous bears.
We'll then look back at our Premiership clash with Hearts and what was a disappointing afternoon in the capital.
The Lionesses were back in action this week, and we'll look back at their thumping away win against Callum Carson's beloved Airdrie.
And finally this week, we'll look ahead to our next game as St Mirren visit West Lothian.
The Lions travelled to Ibrox looking to reach the last four of the League Cup for the second season in a row. It wasn't to be as individual mistakes proved costly and Rangers ran out 2-0 winners. Euan, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think first half we did pretty well, to be honest, containing Rangers. I think it was quite obvious there was a game plan in place to just kind of frustrate. Me and Andy spoke about it last week on the podcast, and it was always going to be the approach to kind of frustrate, get the fans turning on them a little bit. And I think we did that to an extent, albeit Rangers still had their opportunities in the first half. Patterson had a 1v1 that Max has made a good save from. Bassey's blazed one well over, got him behind quite easily for that one. And then Nicky Devlin's pulled off an unbelievable goal line clearance from Morelos when he's got through in behind. But I think for large spells of the half, we did quite well without really creating anything and causing Rangers any problems. I think Davey touched on it, kind of in possession in our own half at times, we looked okay. I thought, there was a debut for Omiyonga. I think first 45 minutes, he was excellent. He was very good at protecting the ball and retaining possession. However, I'll go on to talk about his second half performance, which didn't quite mirror that. But as I say, I think we did really well to get in at half-time 0-0, and that's all you can really ask for when you go to Ibrox, just be in the game, essentially, as long as you can. But we'll touch on it, as always, the Achilles heel, an early goal, and as I was mentioning, Omiyonga, he's really slack on the ball, giving away possession about 25 yards from his own goal. And if you look at the replay of the goal, Jack McMillan's really not followed Roof into the box. I think Roof lays it out wide and McMillan kind of bumps him in a challenge, putting a bit of pressure on, and then he just doesn't follow the run. And Roof's got a tap in the middle of the 6-yard box, and Rangers are 1-up. And, again, without creating anything, we were kind of struggling to get out of half. Rangers had other opportunities against Slack on the ball at the back. I think it was Fitzwater played one across and Roof's got in behind, and albeit Max pulled off a good save, but the second goal kills you. The second goal's an absolute killer. And I don't know what Stryjek's thinking with that one, to be honest. It's so poor. But again, watching the game, some of Max's distribution was quite poor throughout the game, and said to the guys I was with, Andy and Waugh at the game, said it's a matter of time before we get caught out with this. Some of the distribution from the back, and we did. And you give a centre forward like Morelos an opportunity like that, he's obviously going to punish you. And when you're 2-0 down, that's the game over. There was no way getting back into the game, and Rangers totally deserved the win. But it's a tinge of frustration. You can always look at a game at Ibrox and go, look, we've stayed in the game as long as we could type thing. But at the same time, it's a cup tie. I would have liked to have seen us maybe be a tad more expansive, but you can understand, again, going to Ibrox, you're wanting to be tight, but at the same time, it's a one-off game. It's not a league game. I can understand that approach. Maybe for a league game, go there, try and get a point at the minimum. But a cup tie, I would have liked to have seen us open up a little bit more. And I think we played into their hands a wee bit. Don't get me wrong, we were full of praise last week for Andrew Shinnie playing as a false nine, but I think you saw the flip side of that with Shinnie coming deep quite a lot, and he didn't have folk kind of running off him the same way at Ibrox, and it meant we struggled to get out and struggled to kind of put pressure on Rangers in their half of the pitch. And it was a disappointing night because we didn't lay a glove on Rangers, and I know many a team will go to Ibrox this season and not lay a glove on Rangers. That's not having a proper dig, but because of it being a cup tie, I would have liked to have seen us maybe be a little bit more expansive and go for the game a little bit more at times. But look, it's one of those ones where you can't really win at the end of the day. If you went and opened up being really expansive, Rangers would have ended up taking 5 or 6 off us, So it was a disappointing night, but not entirely unexpected, to be honest. What were your kind of thoughts on that, Angus?
Yeah, can't really disagree too much. I don't think many people would have expected us to, get anything from it. But yeah, just similar frustrations, the fact that it's only 2-0 and it's, kind of our own doing for both of the goals that's kind of cost us is always like a sad way to kind of go out. Again, not really having any shots on target or any really clear chances. Not ideal, especially for the fans who ended up, making the trip there. It's pretty brutal, isn't it? 90 minutes have just been kind of, pummeled essentially. But I think we just got to kind of dust ourselves off. I think this is the one that we kind of got to look at and be like, we just played Celtic just there. Perhaps on, a much bigger pitch like Ibrox, like the same kind of game plan wasn't going to be nearly as effective. I think we just got to kind of put it behind us because, again, as we all said, Rangers at Ibrox, I mean, when was the last time that Rangers lost at Ibrox other than, that St Johnstone game there last season? It's been, once in, over about 40 games or so. So I think, can't be too overly critical on the team for that performance. I think maybe the next game is one that we may be a wee bit more, negative towards, and, a couple of more of our gripes will come out. But here, I'm just kind of got to take it on the chin. But obviously you mentioned like Angus kind of first half performance and, a couple of, blocks and good saves. Was there anybody else who, impressed you at all or, made like a statement, to like cement their place in the team, or was it kind of hard to find, any positives within a game such as this?
It's a difficult game to kind of look at positives and things like that when I think we had maybe 30% of the ball or something like that, and we've not really created an awful lot. So you can't really look at the attacking players in a sense of going, they had a really good, they caused loads of problems. It was a big kind of backs to the wall job. One of the main talking points, though, on certainly social media and things like that, was the substitution just before halftime with Adam Lewis. It's caused a bit of debate. What was your take on that one then? Obviously being subbed a minute before halftime.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a fan of that, to be honest. if it's that urgent, then sure. But it doesn't seem as if it was that urgent. I know Davies came out and said, that he rolled his ankle during like the warm up and all of that. If that's the case, then should we be taking a risk on him when we're playing at Ibrox? I don't know. I don't. Obviously, what happened with Robinson last season and that it does kind of strike, and then obviously what's happened with Pan and Yutu earlier on as well. It's not something I like to see, and I don't think it's not something I want to be like a regular occurrence, which already seems to be kind of happening at the club. I mean, that's 3 instances already. If your guy's not fit, then sure. But a minute before half time, I don't know. It does seem a bit, I don't want to say insincere, but a wee bit of a, kind of like a scapegoat to kind of like get themselves out of it. But hopefully they know what's best. I mean, Lewis would end up playing against Hearts, so obviously it wasn't too severe. But I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of thing, that could go horribly wrong and, could very much dent a player's confidence. And I don't know if you see it any different, but yeah, I'm not a fan of seeing that kind of thing happen, in all honesty.
I mean, you touched on the previous incidents. I think the one with Scott Robinson, I think that was always planned, that substitution. And I think that's the player that's taken the hump in that situation, even though he's been well aware that that's what's going to happen. So I would kind of disclude that one. The Paniatu one, yeah, totally get it. It's a total baffling one for the fans as well. The Lewis one, I was at Ibrox and we were kind of watching him, and he was hobbling about for a good 15, 20 minutes prior to halftime. He was limping up and down the park, and I wasn't overly surprised to see him come off. I think it's had he done that 5 minutes earlier than he did, I don't think anyone's raising an eyebrow at it, to be honest, Angus. I think folk are probably going, yeah, should have taken him off, And Davies got to go on the information he's been given by Marvin and Dougie. If Davies not been watching the warm-up and Marvin Dougie have said, look, he's rolled his ankle in the warm-up, but he said he's fine, he looks okay, then, Davy needs to go off that. I'm sure he trusts the opinion of both Marv and Dougie in those situations, having, experienced players themselves. I think the only thing I would maybe say it's a bit of indecision. I think that's the only thing you can maybe criticise him for. He makes that sub after half an hour when he starts hobbling about. As I say, nobody bats an eyelid at it. Nobody's even talking about it. I think, Lewis obviously wanted to continue. Is there an element that he's playing in front of Steven Gerrard, a Liverpool lad playing in front of one of his heroes? He doesn't want to come off the park in front of someone like that. There's probably an element of that to the lad as well. And look, at the end of the day, we conceded a goal because Lewis lost his man right before half time because he's hobbling about and we kept him on the park. The fans would have criticised Davy for that as well. So I think he's caught in a rock in a hard place. Either way, he's probably going to get criticised for it. But the only thing I maybe say is maybe it's a tad indecision and he could have made the sub earlier. But look, if he had to come off, he had to come off. And as I say, having been at the game, you could watch, obviously, when you're watching it on the TV, you're obviously watching it with the ball. Whereas we could see that Adam Lewis was hobbling up and down the park. He was limping up and down the park. So I'm not surprised he's come off. But look, it's over, it's done with. As we say, he played on Saturday against Hearts, which sadly, to be honest, we're going to go on and talk about shortly. The games keep coming thick and fast as we travel to Gorgie to take on Hearts. It would prove to be a comfortable afternoon for the hosts as Hearts ran out 3-0 winners in what was a very, very disappointing afternoon. Angus, how are you feeling after that one? I mean, it was a double whammy for you, the double fracture, and then coming home and seeing that scoreline and then getting to have a look at the highlights. And yeah, not a good one for you then.
Yeah, I think we kind of summed that up in like the intro bit there. Double fracture, but that's not really the worst thing that happened on Saturday for me. Very, very poor. Hearts obviously, to be fair to them, in good form, playing some all right stuff in that, I believe they're unbeaten so far this season, but Jesus Christ, man, we just went there and did nothing. And that's what's the most disappointing thing about it is, we've, showed against Celtic and then even to an extent against Rangers there, we showed some, solidity, especially within the first half, but, just wasn't there for against Hearts, who, a weaker team than both of them. Well, some would disagree, considering how Celtic are right now, but not somebody who we should be, absolutely kind of like terrified of. And, to lose 3-0, not have any like really clear chances on goal, that's what's extremely disappointing. And that raises a lot of like the more kind of issues within the club that I think that, fans can rightfully, have a wee gripe about, because you watch us play against Hearts there and it's just like, what is the goal? What is the aim? It seemed rudderless, in all honesty. When we weren't solid at the back, we didn't offer anything going forward. I'm just glad that I wasn't there, in all honesty. I mean, I didn't exactly prefer what I was doing instead, but geez, if I'd paid, about £27 to go see that, then I would not be impressed at all. But I guess, we've another team who's in red hot form. I mean, this is the kind of thing that keeps on bailing us out a little bit. We can point to the league table and be like, right, we've played all of these teams. This is why we're in this wee bit of a slump. I would maybe be, completely on board with that if I could kind of see elements of what we're trying to do in most of these games. For me, I'm not seeing that entirely, and it makes these next kind of like 4 games so huge for us, and in all honesty for Martindale in particular. Obviously not going to go into that because, he definitely deserves, the time to, play out at least a full round of fixtures before any kind of calls for that start happening. But there's a lot of people who, aren't too impressed, and it's hard to disagree with them at the moment because some of the performances just haven't been good. And with Livingston, we've always been a team who, will always give our all. Just wasn't the case on Saturday. Passive is the best way to describe us, as, Hearts just didn't even really, push us too far, but still, came out with a very comfortable 3-0 win.
I think if you look at the game, I mean, first 25 minutes, I think we were actually okay in the game. I think, we'd held our shape quite well. Hearts were really just moving the ball side to side. They weren't penetrating. They weren't getting in between the lines. They weren't really causing much of a threat. And if you look at the highlights, I think the first highlight from the game is a tackle by Andrew Shinnie in the corner. And that's probably about 20 minutes into the match. And that's the first highlight that Sportscene could genuinely come up with. So I think that shows you that there had been very little in the game at that point. But the opening goal was just so poor. Barry Mackay's absolutely sold Adam Lewis, to be honest. Lewis has dived in for the tackle and Mackay's absolutely done him. Ball to the back post. And don't get me wrong, it's a good finish by Michael Smith, but, we seem a bit too reactive at the moment instead of proactive. And, nobody's picking up. I think it's like Cochrane at the back post, and, he's got a simple knockdown really for Smith. And, it's a poor goal from our perspective, such a poor goal. And then the penalty, I think there's no doubt about it. For me, it's a penalty. Said it at the time, and having seen it back, it's still a clear penalty to me. I think we spoke about it on the podcast before with Ben Williamson. He has that tenacity in him, but sometimes he's almost a little bit too eager at times. And I think there's areas of the pitch where you need to rein that in. And one of them is most certainly your 18-yard box. You need to be a bit more careful when diving in for tackles like that. And he's put a foot in, and the boys won the penalty, and Boyce has obviously dispatched it comfortably. And Hearts have gone in 2-0 up at half-time without having to do anything special in the game. And I think that's what made it more frustrating. And second half, I feel like Hearts, if they really wanted to on Saturday, they could have easily taken 6 or 7 off us. If they wanted to go up the gears and really go for it, I genuinely think they could have taken 6 or 7. That's how poor we were on Saturday. And everyone listens to this podcast and will say that I'm quite positive most of the time, but I came away from the game on Saturday and I was genuinely I was distraught because it was such a poor performance. And don't get me wrong, I understand we've had a tough week. We've had 3 games in 6 days, 2 of which have been against the Old Firm, 1 of which has been at Ibrox. We have been threadbare at the start of the season in terms of players being injured, COVID, things like that. I get it to an extent, but there's ways to lose a game of football, and that's the worst way you could lose. You've gone. Don't get me wrong, Hearts are a decent side. They're a decent side. They're unbeaten this season, having come up from the Championship. But I expect better from us. I just expect better from us. And the third goal, you touched on it, Angus, just passive. It's just, it reminded me a bit of the goal against Martin Boyle's goal at Easter Road a few weeks back. It's just really passive in the corner, and Cochrane's obviously tucked it away at the back post. And as I say, Hearts didn't have to do anything really special in the game to win that game 3-0, and I think that's just what makes it so disappointing. And as you say, I couldn't see what we were trying to do in the game, and I think that's what makes it more frustrating as well. I didn't really see any patterns of play. I didn't really see, a system that was working or clicking. And look, I've been, again, very vocal. I'm totally behind Davy. Davies deserves the time. He's done such a great job for the club in the past. I think he merits the time, but I think the next 4 games are massive. And I think, the chat about we have had a tough start to the season. Again, I agree with that fixture-wise, but I think that excuse goes out the window now with the 4 games that we've got coming up. It's all teams that you'd expect to be in and around us over the course of the season. And I think we desperately need to pick up a couple of wins in these next 4 games to stave off a bit of pressure and start climbing the table, because I can understand fans' frustrations after that one at Tynecastle. Can totally appreciate it, because for me it wasn't good enough. And I'm sure the players will feel exactly the same way, and I'm sure Davey will feel exactly the same way as well. Don't think I'm being off the mark by saying that. But yeah, it was a very disappointing afternoon.
Yeah, not ideal for us at all, but I guess we've got to put that one behind us and kind of bounce on from it. Hopefully, this next kind of week in training, a wee bit of a rest, in all honesty, a very hectic week. But, hopefully the players, will be right up for it and, getting the basics done again. But it's going to be much better, or, it's going to be a very rough kind of rest of the month a couple of rough weeks until, Newbley comes back and, gets the title charge back on track. But I guess we can kind of just leave that there as, 2 games away to talk about, not really an awful lot of positives. We don't want this to be like the most depressing episode ever, so we'll go into something, a wee bit nicer.
Do you want to know what's funny, Angus, is we beat Celtic next week, and neither you or Bruni can turn up for what has been the most positive podcast of the season. And you're back as one of the misery hunters on the podcast for this week's one. It's absolutely typical. But as you say, we'll go on and speak about the women's game just shortly, because that was certainly full of a few positives.
After being awarded a 3-0 cup win last weekend, the Lionesses returned to league action as they made a short trip to Armadale to take on Airdrie. It was a comfortable afternoon for Livi as they romped a 6-0 victory. You and Callum were there. There wasn't much to moan about that performance, was there?
Nah, not at all. It was 6-0 going on, double that, to be honest. I think tough pitch to play on. It was a bit bobbly. It was, we kept seeing sand kind of coming up off the surface when the ball was bouncing as well. So it wasn't the easiest of surfaces to play on. But I think after kind of 10 minutes or so, I think the girls really got to grips with it and started causing a heap of problems, and had a couple of opportunities early on, but managed to break the deadlock. Ashley Fish's great header. It's a great cross from the right hand side, and it's a terrific header at the back post to put us 1-up. And the front two, Ashley Fish and Jen Dodds, were running riot, to be honest, through the game. Their movement, their link-up play, running in behind, running the channels, they were all over the place first half, and Airdrie really couldn't get to grips with the pair of them. And it's that combination set up the second. Jen's again right-hand side, clipped the ball in, and Ashley's powered the header into the roof of the net and 2-0 up, and then Jen's played a massive part for the third. I thought she'd actually given the chance away, to be honest, when she was in the box, but she's been brought down for the penalty, and then she's dispatched it, and 3-0 up at half time. Could have been more. Rachel Walkinshaw had a overhead kick tipped onto the post, great save by the keeper, so it could have been even more at half time. But second half, it was just much of the same, really. Again, we're peppering their goal going forward at ease. Managed to get the fourth, and Ashley Fish completed her hat trick. Good ball down the line from Jess Murphy. Rachel Walkinshaw, good cut back, and it's a tap in the 6-yard box for Ashley to complete her hat trick. And it was good to see Paul Giaconelli rotated the front two. They'd done their job for the afternoon, and Terry Deegan and Sophie Gilchrist came off the bench, and Sophie Gilchrist certainly made an impact in the game, managing to grab a double. Her second one was a peach of a finish, to be honest. Terrific finish on the edge of the box. Vicky Wood did really well. But yeah, it could have been a wee bit more. Only thing I'd maybe say is I think we started to get a little bit greedy, kind of last 10, 15 minutes of the game. I think we maybe lost our shape a couple of times, but it's only natural when you're 6-0 up. Folk want to get in on the action and grab a goal for themselves and things like that as well. So, but no, it was a very comfortable afternoon and a thoroughly deserved result. And as we say, we've touched on this before. It could have been even more than that.
The best way to describe it is just simply one-way traffic. No disrespect to Airdrie, but it's one side of a game you'll probably ever see. The defence, I can't really think of many chances that were kind of offered against us. I thought Fiona Bosler and Tasha Frew and Jess Murphy were absolutely solid the entire game. Their more notable things were them going forward. That's how kind of comfortable it was. But yeah, Shannon Hughes-Lee making her comeback as well, playing it right back. I think we've got to credit her, that wee turn that she does, the Hughes-Lee turn, maybe. We could get that moniker going on, because going down that right-hand side, just kept on pulling out and, successfully every time. And, that those first two goals, I think, were absolutely tremendous and, kind of epitomise, how we want to be played. Obviously playing with the wing-backs, wanting to get down the flanks, and, decent deliveries in. And, obviously Ashley Fish has got the quality to, finish them off. I mean, that's 8 goals since she's joined the club. I mean, she missed the first couple of games of the season as well, but what a signing she seems to be. I mean, another hat-trick here. Yeah, absolutely tremendous. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that, this was 6-0 going on, a lot more. And perhaps on, maybe a wee bit of a better surface or, a larger pitch, these kind of spaces would have been exploited furthermore. Jen Dodds did well to get her goal and win a penalty. Ashley Fish, being credited to her to let Jen take the penalty when she was on a hat trick. Rachel Walkinshaw will be thinking to herself how she not scored in this game. Seems to be another story of Rach gets into all these great positions, but a couple of times it's just not came off for her. So when the next one goes in, I'm sure she'll be absolutely delighted with that. But yeah, the game going into the second half killed off instantly. I mean, I don't really think there was much of a chance of Airdrie coming back into it, as we had, total domination of the ball. But it was just such a complete performance. Credit to the lassies coming on off the bench as well. Sylvie Gilchrist, of course, scoring twice. Terry Deegan, was a real threat up front. Getting about and unselfishly, playing through Gilchrist a good couple of times. Vicky Wood could also went through a couple of times, but the Airdrie goalkeeper had, despite conceding 6 goals, a pretty decent game. It could have been a lot more without that performance as well. So, but yeah, that win now takes us, only, I think it's only 2 points behind, the 2 top teams of the league. One of them is Edinburgh City, who we play next weekend, which, looks like an absolute cracking game. Following a performance like this, where, everybody's done their part, everybody who's came on's done their part, it's the right kind of headache for, Paul to have. Going into that kind of a game, he knows that his team's firing. Speaking to him after the match, he was a little bit hesitant. Obviously, the game last weekend was called off, so hoping that there was no rust there was nothing kind of lingering on. But based off of that performance, it doesn't seem as if they've missed a beat at all. And yeah, great confidence going into that game next weekend, and I'm sure we're all excited to go get down and watch it, because it'll be a cracking match. I think two of the 3 top scoring teams in the league, so plenty of goals will be there, and hopefully the Lionesses can get a victory, that can possibly even propel them to the top of the league. But yeah, very, very pleasing stuff, and yeah, hopefully more to come for the next week.
Yeah, just as Angus touches on there, top of the table clash. What if you haven't been down before? What better way to start getting involved than going and watching the girls, because they're certainly entertaining to watch. Plenty of goals in the games and plenty of chances to watch, and I'm sure the girls would really appreciate your support as well. So if you are free, get down to the game and give the girls your full support. Finally, we once again welcome St Mirren to West Lothian, but this time in search of 3 crucial points. Angus, the last couple of games have been disappointing, to say the least. How are you feeling going into this one?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because St Mirren are kind of a strange side who, largely had like a decent kind of record over them. I know we lost to them twice last season in the league, the first 2 games, but I mean, we were hopeless then. Now, I've said that, thinking about it right now, it seems to be quite bitter in it, but, we played them earlier this season in the Cup, and I really don't think that they were anything special. I mean, it took a calamitous defending from a free kick, for our game to go to extra time against them, and I think that we looked a better team as the game continued to go on as well. They also did just win 3-2 against Aberdeen yesterday, so maybe there's a lot of momentum there. Some of these teams, kind of near the bottom, that one win could be the catalyst that kicks it on. But I think we just kind of know what to expect against St Mirren. I think it's just a similar game that we have to be at it at, or they're going to punish us. The likes of Jamie McGrath, they've got players there who can punish us. Brophy, Main seem to have developed a wee bit of a decent kind of partnership, but I don't think it's not a team who we should be particularly fearful of. Playing at home against them, we've dealt with them many times, and going into this is a game that 3 points is a must at this stage of the season. It's a 6-pointer for sure, because we've got to kind of make sure that there's teams kind of below us, and if a team like St Mirren comes to our patch and creates a wee bit of a distance against us, then it doesn't look too great. Obviously, this was the fixture last year that Gary Holt ended up losing his job, but resigning over. So yeah, it's an absolutely massive one, and I just hope that we kind of look at what kind of went wrong during the weekend on Saturday there, amend that, and get on to this one with a much better some much better idea and a much better attitude of implementing whatever game plan that is, because we've really got to take it to a team like this. And because if we don't, essentially it's going to be really ugly kind of scenes afterwards. I mean, you can imagine what the forum would be like. But we've got to get behind the team, and hopefully we can get that all elusive second win of the season. But it's not a game I'm particularly looking forward to, but we've got to go through with it, haven't we?
Yeah, just having a look at St Mirren's form this season. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, the Aberdeen game was their first win in the league, but they've lost only 2 games. Those were to Hearts at home, and then they got a bit of a drubbing at Celtic Park. And I mean, most teams would probably lose to teams like Hearts and Celtic this season in our position. So they've actually had a fairly consistent start to the season, I would say. I've always been quite complimentary at St Mirren on the podcast in terms of since Jim Goodwin's come in. They've got a way of playing. They tend to be very difficult to break down. Take away that 6-0 at Celtic Park, but that could happen to, as I say, any team over the course of the season. So they tend to be very well organised, very well drilled. They've got a lot of experienced players at this level in their squad. If you look at their recruitment over the summer, we spoke about it previous episodes, like Main, Tanza, Power, guys who have been there and done it in the Premiership. So a very experienced side. But, again, looking at the highlights there against Aberdeen, I think the red card played a massive part in their game in terms of them turning the game around. And I think they've had a little tweak of shape as well. Having, Kyle Gunn, if you follow him on Twitter, he covers St Mirren quite a lot, St Mirren fan, and he was saying they had a bit of a tweak in shape and they were playing almost 2 in behind Brophy. It seemed like the boy Ronan, who managed to grab a couple of goals, who joined in the summer, and Jamie McGrath was playing in behind them as well. So that seemed to cause a few problems for Aberdeen. So it's something we might need to be switched on to if they go with that. Having just beat Aberdeen, I assume they'll probably go with quite a similar shape for the game. But as you say, Angus, it's a tough game because I think there's a bit of pressure on for us now. As I say, that run of fixtures, that difficult run of fixtures we had to start the season is gone now. And we're coming into a run of fixtures now where all our fans will be expecting us to try and pick up results and start turning the season round early doors. And that puts a little bit of pressure on the team, I think. And I'm sure St Mirren will be looking at this fixture the exact same way. They'll be looking at it as a good chance to go and get points. But if you look at the League Cup tie earlier in the season, there's very little to choose between the two teams. So I expect it to be very similar. I expect it to be a very close game. I think all the games since the pair of us got promoted a few seasons back have all been very close, and there's been very little to choose. So I'm not expecting anything differently. In terms of personnel wise, is there anyone? I know one that you'll be desperate to see back in the team straight away. I'm sure all our listeners will know, but it was one me and you were chatting about over the weekend. But any other sort of personnel changes you'd like to see for this one?
Well, let's just get the elephant out of the room straight away. Perhaps he's not being played anymore because, when he had been played, we're just talking about him. We haven't really been building up the calls for him to keep on playing. But Alan Forrest has got to play. Like, there must be something wrong there. He must be carrying some sort of an injury, because I just can't fathom why, he's not playing recently. Especially on that, kind of the left or the right wing, more than capable of doing both. Had a good start to the season, scored a good couple of goals. Again, it's the same criticism I had last season. I want to see wingers playing in natural wide positions, and I can't understand why Forrest hasn't been playing. There must be a reason that we're kind of missing out. But other than that, try to think of kind of players. With Livingston this season, you never really know who's going to be fit, in all honesty. So it's kind of hard to decide on who's going to be there. I think the interesting one is, what do you do up front? Do you go with somebody like Anderson, who kind of caused them a couple of issues, with the pacing behind when we played him earlier in the season, or do you stick with Shinnie, or do you even drop Shinnie back a wee bit? Because, if Pittman's still not going to be fully fit, is Shinnie one of the better players to have in that number 10 area, who can maybe create something against a team like St Mirren, who we may end up having a wee bit more of the ball against. I think they've got a real kind of headache there now, because you're looking at that team and, all these centre mid options, kind of becoming fit again. You look at Omiyonga, you look at Jason Holt, Ben Williamson, Adam Lewis. Somebody's probably going to have to drop out there, because, I want to see the likes of Forrest and, Bailey on natural wings, rather than, forcing kind of left backs or centre mids out there. So for me, I guess you kind of got to go Omiyonga, because, new signing. Jason Holt, I think, deserves, to keep his place in the team. And yeah, I guess I would go Shinnie in that kind of as a number 10, to kind of fill in that gap for Pittman. Unless Pittman were to be fit, I would definitely have him slotted back in, because, that kind of tenacity that Pitts has is something that we've been missing. I mean, we've talked about the game against Hearts and about being passive. Pittman's not that kind of player, regardless of what, that's the kind of way that he would lead by example. But yeah, interested to hear your thoughts. Are you much a similar thought, or any kind of notable differences you would make?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the Alan Forrest one. I think it was strange that he's been back out the team, to be honest. He looked a real bright spark. He played the Aberdeen game, was very good against Aberdeen, obviously grabbed a couple of goals against St Mirren in the Cup, and then Motherwell as well. So it has been a wee bit of a surprise to see Alan out of the team. I'd like to see him back in, because I think he adds a goal threat. And let's be honest, we've been lacking that the last couple of games. The Shinnie Anderson, is it possible to play the pair of them? Is it possible to play Shinnie kind of in the three up top, maybe as the centre of the two, or you have him and Anderson maybe rotating, just to offer something a little bit different? To be honest, you could have Shinnie dropping into little pockets to pick up the ball with Anderson running off him. It's maybe an option to do that, to get both of them on the park and get goal threats on the pitch and causing some issues. That would maybe be a bit harsh on Odin Bailey, who I think has been one of our brighter sparks in recent games in terms of creative threat. So I mean, there's plenty of options there. It remains to be seen what the situation is with Pitts. It's, as we say all the time, when Pitts misses games, it's obviously got to be something pretty serious for Pitts not to be starting games, because he's pretty much a first name on the team sheet. Remains to be seen what the situation is with Sibbs. I know it was quite a nasty cut that he had. He's maybe got a sickness bug or something like that as well at the same time. So it remains to be seen what happens with him. So as you say, Davy is the tinker man of Scottish football. He's the Claudio Ranieri of Scottish Premiership football. He likes to change and tweak the team every week. But that's maybe a couple options I would maybe look at to, as I say, just add a little bit more of a creative spark in the final third, and try and give St Mirren some problems and keep them guessing, because, as I say, the last couple of games, don't get me wrong, the opposition's been very good, but we've offered a real lack of creativity in the final third and in the middle of the park as well. So that's maybe a couple of options to go with. But how do you see it going then, Angus? If I was to push you for a prediction, can you muster up any positivity after the last couple of games?
I think you're asking the wrong person, to be honest. I won't go, completely down doom and gloom. I don't really see an awful lot separating the two teams. I think I'll go for a 1-1 draw. Don't think it'd be the worst result in the world, but I don't think it's necessarily what we need either. I think it's imperative that we avoid defeat, but I'm overly confident that we'll pick up 3 points. Not entirely. So I think, I'm going to stick with 1-1.
I think I've been overly positive in most of my predictions this season, to be honest. And I think I'm going to rein it in for this one. And this isn't me not believing in the team and that before. Matt Hay, who regularly tweets us to give us absolute pelters for not predicting a win. Shame. But I'm so downbeat after that Hearts performance. Genuinely, I'm not particularly confident going into this one, and obviously St Mirren have come off the back of a cracking result against Aberdeen. Their tails are going to be up going into it, and they've managed to produce a couple of good results in recent times at our place. So I think we'll get beat. I think it's going to be really tight, and I think St Mirren are going to beat us 1-0. I obviously beg to God that that's not the case, and we can get something, get points on the board. But as I say, I think I've still got a hangover from Saturday's performance, and I'm just struggling to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But here's hoping the lads can go and prove us wrong and go and pick up 3 points on Saturday.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week in and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us, and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. If none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team. Come on, Livi!
That's quite ironic, that last line, isn't it? Because it hasn't been a great week following the Lothian's finest football team, but there you go.
Not been a great week for any of us, has it?
Nah. Come on, Livi!
For the Lionesses. Here's to the Lionesses.
Yes,
Come on,
here's to the
Livi.
Lionesses. Come on, Livi!
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Amberville. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premiership.